Okie doke. Christine and Juliet, please.
Kia ora tātou, I'm Christine Dann and this is Juliet, Neill, and together we are representing Climate Risk Concern. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to our submission and for all the work that you do for my home place and people, including the artists. I was 16 years old and living in Bowenvale Ave in the shadow of the Port Hills when the worst cyclone on record hit Christchurch. Its name was Cyclone Giselle, but we usually remember it as the Wahine Storm of 1968. That extreme and extremely deadly cyclone was a one-off for New Zealand in the 20th century. For me, it just meant struggling through the storm on my bike to get to Cashmere High School, taking shelter at a friend's place halfway along the route and finding out that school was cancelled for the day. For the thousands and thousands of young people in Hawke's Bay, Te Tairāwhiti, the Auckland area and Northland, extreme storms like Cyclone Giselle are now becoming the new normal. Ex-tropical cyclones are now coming further south and their intensity is increasing. Their effects on young lives are now much worse than a day missed from school. Cyclone Giselle took out whole forestry plantations in Canterbury, which at that time were mainly on the plains. Now, as on the East Cape, they are on steep and erosion-prone hillsides, including the hillsides on Banks Peninsula, where I now live. So I wonder and I worry about what will happen when the next cyclone hits Canterbury. But I wonder and I worry even more about an immediate risk from forestry plantations, especially those close to homes, shops and roads, which I never experienced when growing up next to the Port Hills. Now it has happened twice in the past 7 years. Fire. Climate Risk Concern's written submission contains more detailed information on the risk to Christchurch's land and people posed by a heating climate, including more droughts, floods, storms, coastal erosion and wildfires. It includes our recommendations on the action which the Council can and should take to significantly reduce the fire risk close to homes and roads. This is necessary both now and in the future. That future which will include rising average temperatures and hence more vulnerability to droughts and fires, whether we like it or not. When my great-great-grandparents, Hannah and Joseph Dann, sailed into Whakaropo on the Lady Nugent in 1849, they would have seen the southern slopes of the Port Hills covered in native forest from sea level to the ridgeline. Today, just a few remnants remain. Their great-great-grandchildren walking the hills over 100 years later had to make do with little patches of original bush like that on Mitchell's Track. Plantations of highly flammable exotic trees now dominate these hills and others around the harbour. Those trees were planted when the global average temperature was still less than 1 degree above baseline. This year, scientists think it is likely that the world will be 1.5 degrees hotter and on track to be 2 degrees hotter by mid-century, if not sooner. As Louis MacDeese wrote in his prescient 1938 poem, Bagpipe Music, "The glass is falling hour by hour, the glass will fall forever. But if you break the bloody glass, you won't hold up the weather." The citizens of Christchurch did not make this weather, and we can't hold it up. What we can do now and in the future is take significant steps to reduce the risk to our lives and our land being harmed by this weather. We could have started on this sooner, we should have started on it sooner, but now, straight away, we'll have to do. Climate Risk Concern's vision is that by 2049, the Port Hills will be well on the way to being covered in low flammability, erosion-preventing native plants again, as will the rest of Banks Peninsula. The City Council has the powers and the responsibility to take a lead in making this happen. We urge you to do it with immediate effect.
And if I could just add to that, I live in Littleton. The first Port Hills fires covered my house in ash. If it were any closer, it could have been disastrous. I have above me a plantation of eucalypts, which I believe belong to the council, many of which are dead and even more flammable, and also belonging to the Port Company, a stand of pine trees, which are also incredibly flammable. They are close, and there's a lot of anxiety in our community about it. We presented 2 deputations to the community board. One was straight after the 2017 Port Hills fire, and the second one was just before the most recent Port Hills fire. We're not sure how much you're aware of them, but we have a copy. I can send it through electronically as well if you wish to have a look. It will be expensive replacing our trees, and it can't be done just by volunteers, which at the moment it is, because of the terrain. Things have been planted in high erosion areas, and to replant gradually while you remove the other trees takes expertise, particularly with felling the trees, and it takes machinery. We don't see anything in the long-term plan that addresses this, and this is what we really want to see before there really is a catastrophe. We've seen what happened in Oahu, and it could very well happen on the peninsula. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You've used up all the time, and that's a good presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Lila.